And we are live, Mayor. Sorry for the delay.
Thank you. It's now 6:32 p.m. And I'll declare this agenda briefing forum open. Apologies to those who are waiting at 6:30. We had a small problem with live streaming, but we are now live online. I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. Nanjarapan wajak nunga bujak yakin nidja bilya baduk. I am honoured to be standing on Wajak Noongar country on the banks of the Swan River. Nan kadich Noongar mort ken kabak nija Wajak Noongar buja. Nan kadich nija Noongar brodia kora yay order balapan mordich Noongar kadajan mort where buja yay. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect past, present and emerging leaders, their continuing cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land, which continues to be important today. Nan Yunka Balapan Noongar Brodia where Mort Nija Buja. I thank them for the contribution made to life in the town of Victoria Park and to this region. Item 4 on the agenda is announcements from the presiding member. The purpose of this agenda briefing forum is to provide an opportunity for elected members to ask questions and obtain additional information on officer reports in the draft Ordinary Council meeting agenda. It is not a decision-making forum, nor is it open for debate. Members of the public that may be directly affected by an item on the agenda can make presentations, deputations, statements and ask questions prior to the matter being formally considered by Council at the next Ordinary Council meeting. We also considered general questions from the public as well. All participation in this forum meeting will be audio recorded and live streamed on the town's website, and the live stream will be archived and made available on the town's website after the meeting. All those in attendance at this meeting are expected to extend due courtesy and respect to the meeting by refraining from making any adverse or defamatory remarks regarding Council, the staff or any elected member. And no one shall create a disturbance at a meeting by interrupting or interfering with the proceedings, or expressing approval or dissent by conversing or by any other means. There is an opportunity to ask questions and make statements at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. The opportunity to ask questions and make statements at the end of the meeting is limited to those items only on the agenda and those members of the public who did not participate in the first public participation session at this meeting, which we'll come to shortly. And our public participation time will generally be held for 30 minutes and additional time can be extended by agreement from the meeting. I will deal with pre-submitted questions and statements first, as this is an online meeting, and then a call will go out to any other members of the public who may have joined the online meeting through the registration process, but who haven't pre-submitted either a statement or a question. I would propose, as per our usual practice, to limit the number of questions to 3 per person and 2 minutes per statement. However, if there are only a few questions being asked and a few questions pre-registered along with statements, then we can by all means take more statements and questions from people if required. Responses to any questions that are taken on notice that relate to an agenda item will be presented in the officer's report for the Ordinary Council meeting agenda under the heading Further Consideration to that item, and responses to any general matters that are taken on notice tonight will be made available in the relevant Ordinary Council meeting agenda under the section titled Responses to Public Questions Taken on Notice. Item 5 on the agenda is attendance. We have all elected members in attendance, save for Councillor Luana Lissandro, who's on approved leave of absence. We have a number of members of the town's administration present tonight: the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Valletta, Chief Operations Officer, Ms. Adams, Acting Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Ellis, Chief Community Planner, Ms. Martin Good. We also have the Manager of Development Services, Mr. Cruikshank, the Manager of Governance and Strategy, Ms. Brajanovic, the Manager of Property Development and Leasing, Mr. Denham, and the Acting Finance Manager, Ms. Bursich. Also got our Minute Secretary tonight is Ms. Noon, and we have 2 meeting support persons in Ms. Higham and Ms. Louise. There are no apologies for tonight's meeting. Item 6 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Mr. CEO, do we have any declarations of interest, please?
Yes, we do, Madam Mayor. Item 12.2, Councillor Wilfred Hendricks. It's a financial interest as he's a part owner of a property on Albany Highway. Any improvements made to the strip will add value to properties loaned. Item 12.4, Councillor Wilfred Hendricks, impartiality interests. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Victoria Park, which runs the Vic Park Market. Item 13.2, Councillor Jesse Hamer, impartiality interests. The owner of Sonda Cafe is known to me. Item 13.2, Anthony Valletta, impartiality interest. I know the property owner and have spoken to him about the proposal. Item 13.2, Councillor Wilfred Hendricks, an impartiality interest. I have had meetings in the past with Mr. Mark Irix. Item 15.2, Councillor Wilfred Hendricks, an impartiality interest. He's a member of the Rotary Club of Victoria Park, which hires reserves from the town. And item 15.3, Councillor Wilfred Hendricks, an impartiality interest, as he is a member of the Rotary Club of Victoria Park, which runs events on parks in the town.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Are there any other declarations of interest from elected members? Just a reminder, if you do consider at some stage that you do have an interest that needs to be declared, please ensure that you declare that before we start asking questions about the particular item in the agenda. And that's especially important if you have a financial interest to declare, because you won't be permitted to remain in the meeting while questions are asked about that item. We'll now move on to item 7, which is public participation time. Now, this is an online meeting, but we now have the capacity for members of the public to join our online meetings. And we do have some members of the public in attendance tonight, one of whom is John Arthur Cahill, who has got a statement to read and a number of questions that he would like to ask relating to item 12.5, the proposed heritage list, local planning policy, and amendments to the local heritage survey. So, Mr. Cahill, if you're able to hear me okay, I'm going to go over to you now and say that you're welcome to read your statement and ask your questions in whichever order you would like. And whenever you are ready to do so, please simply switch your microphone on and introduce yourself, and you can begin speaking.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I'm not seeing Mr. Cahill in my view.
He is in the participants list that's appearing on my screen as an attendee, which I've assumed means he's already in the electronic meeting room. He may be having some difficulties with his audio. Not actually sure if participants who are attendees can actually see. You should be able to use the electronic hand to signal, but you are right, I'm not seeing him so far appearing. Mr. Cahill has raised his electronic hand, so he is with us. So that's a good start. Mr. Cahill, since you can obviously hear me, if you can take down your electronic hand and in answer to this question, use your electronic hand again. Are you having difficulty with your audio? I take that to be a yes. So my next question to you, and again, please continue to use your electronic hand to signal. Have you tried logging out of the meeting and logging back in with the link that was sent to you? So you put your electronic hand up for yes. Yes, you have done that. So Ms. Louise, is there anything that we can do further to assist Mr. Cahill? I see he's now actually left the electronic meeting room, so he may have taken that as he should try that first. but what other methods do we have to assist members of the community who joined in on a link but can't seem to make themselves heard?
I am not sure at this stage, Mayor. I am trying to work it out myself.
Thank you. I do understand, are you the meeting host? Are you able to unmute Mr. Cahill?
I should be able to, but he's not showing up on my view.
Okay, so he has
re-entered
the participants room according to mine, and he has put his electronic hand up, so it means he's gone back out and he's come back in. Mr. Cahill, we were trying to see if we could have the meeting administrator unmute you if you're not able to get your own mute button to release you so that you can speak. But if you have just rejoined us and you want to try again, I'll be quiet now for a moment and let you have a chance to try again. Looks like we're still not having much luck. Mr. Cahill, if you could raise your hand to let us know you are still having difficulties. Yes. So I certainly can see your presence. I'm now going to ask you another question, and you can use your electronic hand to signal a yes to this question, please. So we'll need you to take your electronic hand down, please. Thank you. So my question now is, would you like me as the presiding member to read your statement and ask your 3 questions on your behalf? You've indicated with your electronic hand up, so I'm going to take that in the affirmative. So we will proceed on. I'm very sorry about that, Mr. Cahill. I'm not sure what more we can do to assist you to be heard, but I will now read your statement first and then ask your questions. So this is a statement from John Arthur Cahill in relation to item 12.5, and the statement reads, the School of Philosophy WA Inc., which registered with the ACNC as a charity, bought 13 Teague Street, Burswood, prior to there being any heritage register. At the time, 13 Teague Street was likely to be demolished if not purchased by an organisation such as ours. Since then, the school has significantly enhanced the property through voluntary efforts of students in the school. 13 Teague is the only significant asset of the organisation, and other financial resources are limited. The School of Philosophy disagrees with and objects to the placement of 13 Teague Street, Burswood, 6100 on the local government heritage register. A number of questions arise from the potential placement of the building on the heritage register, which, as per prior submission from the chairman of the School of Philosophy, the School of Philosophy objects to. Question number 1. What compensation will be payable by the Town of Victoria Park for any additional costs arising from any mandated additional professional services required for submissions for planning approval? Direct that question to the Manager of Development Services, Mr. Cruikshank.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No compensation will be payable. However, as outlined in the officer's report, it is agreed that consideration should be given as part of future council budget deliberations to potential financial incentives or grants for landowners for professional services and for, I guess, the actual improvement or maintenance works to places on the heritage list. So in that respect, the officers intend upon making a further modification to the recommendation that's before council, or before the agenda briefing forum tonight at least, for council to potentially consider the inclusion of funds in the 2023-24 budget for financial incentives and/or grants for properties on the heritage list. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cruikshank. The second question reads, by placing the building on a heritage register, does that prevent the demolition of the building so that the site may be developed to its existing full potential value? I'll again direct that question to Mr. Cruikshank.
Yes, thank you again, Madam Mayor. The listing of a place on the heritage list does not necessarily prevent the demolition of the building on the site, but it does signal that the property has cultural heritage significance. And that being the case, there would need to be very compelling reasons for council to support the demolition of the building.
Thank you, Mr. Cruikshank. The third question is, if demolition is not allowed, such action will significantly reduce the value of the asset to the organisation, since the market for such a building will be very limited and would prevent being able to sell the site at land value to a developer. What compensation would be payable by the Town of Victoria Park for loss of value from non-developed land value to what the property could be sold for with a heritage order on the property? Again, direct that question to Mr. Cruikshank.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Once again, there would be no compensation payable. There is evidence elsewhere that a heritage listing can actually have a positive impact upon property values, although it is accepted in this instance that a heritage listing may prevent the development of the site to its full development potential.
Thank you, Mr. Cruikshank. Mr. Cahill, I'm assuming that you've been able to hear your questions read out and answered, as well as your statement. And again, I'm very sorry that we weren't able to accommodate you asking those questions yourself. But you have it now on my screen. Yes, indeed.
I can now.
Yes. Again, sorry about that. Do you have any follow-up questions apart from those that you pre-submitted on this topic while we have you now with audio available?
The question that arises is, what avenues do we have to object and remove the property should you place the property on the register going forward?
Thank you. Direct that question to the Manager of Development Services, Mr. Cruikshank, again, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the opportunity now. Effectively, the council will be asked in 2 weeks' time to make a final decision on the matter. So the decision on whether to list the property on the heritage list ultimately sits with the council to make that decision. So the council's decision in 2 weeks' time is effectively final.
So, okay, so you make the choice and we suffer the consequences.
Well, Mr. Cahill, in terms of what you can do, whilst Mr. Cruikshank indicated that in 2 weeks' time at the ordinary council meeting, the decision is being put forward to council to make, you do have some opportunities between now and then to make submissions to council. So you've got a number of opportunities open to you. One of them is for you to make a written submission to all elected members. You can do that either by an email sent to all of us, or you can do that by a letter, which could be submitted into the town and then distributed to all elected members ahead of the meeting in 2 weeks' time. You are welcome to register your interest with the Chief Executive Officer not later than 24 hours prior to the council meeting in 2 weeks' time that you wish to make a deputation on behalf of the School of Philosophy. That deputation would be done at the ordinary council meeting, and under our rules, you have a maximum of 10 minutes to make a presentation to all elected members as to what you would like to see happen with regards to the property. And I think they're the chief opportunities that you have. You can also submit questions between now and the ordinary council meeting in 2 weeks' time. And those questions can be submitted to the town's manager of development services if you're looking for technical answers to questions. And you can also submit questions to councillors as well if you're wanting to find out further information that you feel that you don't have ahead of the ordinary council meeting that's coming up in 2 weeks' time. Before I finish my remarks, Mr. Cruikshank, would those be the appropriate opportunities for a party to lodge notice of their objection ahead of the matter being presented to council for decision?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I think everything you said is completely appropriate, and as you've pointed out, it's open to Mr. Cahill to make representations to elected members. So yes, I agree with what you said.
Thank you. So Mr. Cahill, does that outline some of the opportunities that you have available to you from now right up until during the meeting in 2 weeks' time when the matter will be presented to council for its decision?
Yes, that is. Thank you. I'm presuming these minutes, these meeting minutes will be published and sent back?
So the minutes of tonight's forum do get published. In terms of the time frame by which they are published, I might actually ask our minutes secretary, Ms. Noon, when is it we would expect that the unconfirmed minutes for tonight's forum will be available to the public on the town's website?
The minutes will be published on the website by close of business this Friday.
Thank you, Ms. Noon. So, Mr. Cahill, you can then go to the town's website and you'll find the date for tonight, and underneath it you'll be able to click on it and you'll see the unconfirmed minutes, which will contain certain information from tonight. Those minutes are not a verbatim record of everything that's said tonight. They're intended to be a summary of answers of your question and also the answers given. So clearly you had some pre-submitted questions and then your additional one, which I've now given you some additional information to answer.
All right, look, thank you very much for your help. And I can.
If you have any issues, Mr. Cahill, you're very welcome to reach out. You can send me an email directly. My mayor's email address is on the town's website, or you can contact the town's office by phoning the main number and outline what further information you're looking for if you need further help to put in submissions ahead of the next meeting.
Thank you very much for your patience and your assistance getting us through. I'll do so and I will be back in contact. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Cahill. Again, apologies for not being able to hear you at the outset. So thank you for your submission.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night. So next we have a statement which is from Trent Will from Taylor Burrell Barnett in relation to item 13.2, the proposal to dispose of a portion of Reed Park by lease. Mr. Will has been in the meeting room electronically with us since the beginning. We're hoping that he's going to have no difficulties being heard. I see that his electronic hand is already up. So, Mr. Will, just as I said before, you're welcome to start speaking when you're ready. I see that you're now appearing on my screen in front of me, although I don't have video of you, but certainly indicates that you've got audio. So whenever you're ready, you can commence with your statement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'll just confirm you can hear me firstly.
Absolutely, we definitely can.
Brilliant. Good evening, councillors. I'm also in the room tonight with Mr. Mark Eriks, who's the owner of number 484 Albany Highway, and wanted to make a brief statement on item 13.2 of tonight's agenda, which is the proposal to utilise a small section of Reed Park for outdoor dining and community purposes. So we are supportive of the officer's recommendation, and in my statement tonight, I'd just like to provide you some brief information about the proposal and make one small request with regard to the recommendation or the resolution. I wish to also thank the officers. It's been around 9 months that we've been discussing this current version of the proposal, The officers, particularly the place planning team, have facilitated discussions with almost all of the town's business units, and we're very grateful for this. Councillors, what we are seeking to achieve here is a space that can be used for outdoor dining associated with the Sonder coffee, whilst also offering a community benefit. Sonder opened approximately 3 years ago, and despite COVID challenges during this time, it has become a real linchpin of the local community. It's helped bring some life to this portion of Albany Highway, which is sometimes seen as a bit of a dead space between the Victoria Park and East Victoria Park cafe strips. The proposal involves the use of approximately 30 square metres of land for outdoor dining for the cafe. This would occur on the rooftop of 2 sea containers, as the rooftop will sit level with the cafe. The ground floor would then be utilised for community purposes, such as meeting space. Councillors, we understand sea containers can sometimes have a negative connotation around them, and I wish to assure you that we are looking to produce a high quality development. You will observe some of the examples of this on the last page of the concept plans, which is attachment 3 to the officer's report. Part of the reason we've proposed sea containers is also that the structures are easily removable. So if the town requires the space, they can simply be picked up and moved, and the park can be returned to its original condition relatively easily. In many ways, we see our proposal as being similar to a parklet or an alfresco dining proposal. It's just that instead of activating the public street, we're activating the park. And we believe that provides a number of benefits. It will provide surveillance and activation of the park and also the community garden, and not to mention the ground floor is set aside for community purposes. Finally, councillors, we have one minor request with respect to the officer recommendation. If I can draw your attention to paragraph 15 of the officer's report, which in the last sentence reads that council may wish to consider a rent-free period for the first year. We would really appreciate if council were to allow this. It would just help the proponents get up and running and would help with some of the initial implementation costs. Councillors, we've gone through extensive discussions with staff on this matter, and we really hope you will support our proposal in 2 weeks' time. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions or wish to discuss the matter with us between now and the council meeting, Mark and I would be happy to make ourselves available.
Thank you, Mr. Will. Appreciate you making that statement to us tonight, and also appreciate Mr. Eriks, who I understand you said is with you in the room at the same time. So thank you very much for that. The next questions that we have that have been pre-submitted are a series of 5 questions. I'm going to deal with them individually because they will be directed to different people to answer. So these are a series of questions from the Ratepayers Association. The first question is, on May 17th, the council decided to advertise its intention to levy differential rates. Why has this not been advertised in the local newspaper, and where can people who are not on the internet read or hear about this decision? Direct that question to our Acting Finance Manager, Ms. Ursich.
Thanks, Vernon. So over the past year, there has been a change in the community newspaper delivery. They've changed from delivered community newspapers for local areas to Perth Now publication. This publication is available for pickup at various locations and has 4 options: North, Central, South and Mandurah. Due to the timing and the change in distribution and readership, the notice was published in the West Australian, and this has allowed a larger coverage and for fast publication as soon as the decision was made. So the differential rates were advertised in the West Australian on the 19th of May.
Thank you, Ms. Ursich. In relation to the ratepayers' other part of their question, where can people who are not on the internet read or hear about the decision of council? Is that a matter where anyone who wishes to read the decision can seek a hard copy from the town's administration? If you could assist me with that question, Ms. Ursich.
Yes, it would be available for anyone that would ask over the counter.
Can I also ask you, while I have you, whether or not copies of the resolution of council and therefore the council reports, are they available in hard copy routinely at the town's library?
I'm not too sure off the top of my head. Maybe Varna might be able to assist with that query.
All right, thank you. I might ask Ms. Brajanovic if you could advise if members of our community can also obtain a copy or read a copy of the decision from the 17th of May from the town's library.
Excuse me, members of the public can obtain a copy at the town's library. If there isn't a printed copy, a copy can always be printed for someone at request.
All right, thank you. The second question from the ratepayers relates to item 13.2, proposal to dispose of a portion of Reed Park by lease. The town is recommending that council approve the leasing of a portion of Reed Park to accommodate what amounts to an extension of a business premises constructed using sea containers. Please explain how a structure within the commercial area made from sea containers is in keeping with the objectives of the town's streetscape policies. I'm going to refer this question to the author of the report, I think. Mr. Denham, are you able to assist with that question? Mr. Denham, at the moment you seem to be a phantom. We can see your name. We can see a blank square where your face would ordinarily appear, but at the moment we cannot see you. I'm hoping that you haven't fallen onto the floor. So a moment ago I saw Mr. Cruikshank's hand go up, but I'm not entirely sure that this is a question actually for Mr. Denham. Mr. Cruikshank, are you able to assist?
Yes, I can, Madam Mayor. The imagery provided by the proponent indicates that the sea container will be substantially modified, and we consider it will be of a standard of appearance acceptable for a park in a commercial environment.
Thank you, Mr. Cruikshank. The next question from the ratepayers is in relation to item 13.2. Again, proposal to dispose of a portion of Reed Park by lease. The question is, will this set a precedence for sea containers being used for the construction or extension of other commercial buildings throughout the town? I might direct that question back to Mr. Cruikshank, please, as Manager of Development Services.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is not expected to set such a precedent, as the set of circumstances involved here are quite unique and distinguishable from other properties.
Thank you. The next question relates to a general question, which is the administration building is locked during the day and many staff are working from home. When will the administration staff return to work in the office? And when will the administration building reopen to the public? Direct that question to the Manager of Governance, Ms. Brajanovic.
The administration staff are currently working in the office and from home. The town has developed a roadmap for staffing levels to increase within the administration building with an estimated return in July. But this plan is subject to change based on the information available from the state government in relation to health and social measures. At this stage, based on the current resourcing circumstances and caseload environment, the town is planning to reopen the administration building at the start of July, but this could change based on the circumstances at the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brajanovic. The final question from the Ratepayers Association reads, the state government has removed most COVID-19 restrictions other than for aged care and hospitals. What else needs to happen before the council returns to in-person council meetings? I'll answer that question. Council meetings are held in person unless authorised otherwise under the Local Government Act and regulations. If circumstances exist which render it appropriate for meetings to be held online, then in accordance with the regulations, either the council or the mayor may authorise online meetings. What the circumstances may be at the time that would justify it being appropriate to authorise meetings to be held online is to be determined at the time. That concludes the questions that have been pre-submitted, and since we have no other persons in attendance to ask any other questions, we'll now move on to the remainder of our agenda. So the next item on the agenda is presentations. Item 8, we have none. Item 9 is deputations, we have none. Item 10 is the method of dealing with agenda business. So propose to follow our usual practice. We'll deal with questions from those items on the agenda which elected members have indicated they wish to ask questions about. We won't go to items on the agenda for which questions have not been asked. So at the moment, I've been notified that we have questions in relation to the following agenda items. So if elected members could please listen to this list, and if you have questions about other items, please let me know at the end of this list and we'll add them in. Item 12.1, Metronet. Item 12.2, Stage 2 initiation of Albany Highway Precinct Structure Plan. Item 12.4, Events Strategy. Item 12.5, Proposed Heritage List, Local Planning Policy Heritage List, and amendments to the Local Heritage Survey. Item 13.1, Proposed Parking Restrictions. And item 13.2, Proposal to dispose of portion of Reed Park by lease. Are there any other items that elected members would wish to ask questions about? Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I'd like to ask a question around 11.1, the Council Resolution Status Report, please.
Thank you. We'll add that to the list. Are there any other items? Not seeing anybody else's hands going up. So I would like to add 14.3 in, which is the budget. And so we'll go with these items in order, but so we can maintain the order, I would encourage elected members, if you do think of an item that you want to ask questions about, please let me know as soon as you can so that we don't end up moving all around and backtracking. It's much easier for ourselves, the staff, and also members of the community who are watching on live streaming to follow the agenda in numerical order. So on that basis, we will begin with item 11, which is the Chief Executive Officer reports. Council Resolution Status Report is item 11.1. Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question in regards to the attachment, the completed resolutions. The first or second page, it actually highlights a resolution, the very first one that's been completed in regards to the adoption of the state government's target of employment with people with a disability at 2.3%. Could I have some advice around the extension of that resolution that was adopted in the December at 5%, and what are the implications? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to give some consideration for a moment as to who might be best to assist with answering this question. So, Mr. CEO, who would you like me to direct that question to, please?
Madam Mayor, I can have a shot at it, but if I'd like Councillor Anderson to repeat her actual question again, please.
Certainly. Deputy Mayor Anderson, are you able to repeat your question, please?
Yeah, sure. And I'm happy to also take it on notice as well. It doesn't have to be an answer this evening. The completed resolutions, the first one on page 2, it's the adoption of the state government target of 2.3% employment of people with a disability. I note that it's on the completed list as of May. I would like to have further information around the 5% employment target that was adopted, and are we still working on that if this initial one is completed? Like how does that work?
That does sound, Mr. CEO, like probably one to be taken on notice for a detailed answer.
Yep, I'm happy to take that on notice, but I'd add that I believe we adopted the 5%. So I'm a bit curious as to why the 2.3 resolution is here. So I will take it on notice though.
Thank you. I think obviously the earlier resolution appears on there because it was passed before the later one, but in any event, I think Deputy Mayor Anderson's questions are much deeper than why it simply is on the list. I think she's looking for other information, so that might be the easiest way to deal with that. Deputy Mayor Anderson, did you have any other questions about this item?
No, that was all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I might actually ask a couple of questions about the completed resolutions report. Can we have some clarification about why all the actions in the completed resolutions report that have due dates dating back to 2019 suddenly all appear to have been listed as completed on various dates in May 2022? Might direct that to the Manager of Governance, Ms. Brajanovic.
Thank you. Some actions were actually missed when Doc Assembler made an update. They were allocated to people who had actually left the town. So that was discovered last month during their last update. So what we had to do is we had to just go through all of them, make sure that they're all completed, and we have now included them in this report for council to be able to see.
All right, thank you. So does that mean that they will in due course come off the completed resolutions list, given how old some of them appear to be?
Yeah, that is correct. We just wanted to put them on for this time so that council and the community can see. And now that they've been shown on this report, in the next one, they're not going to be included again.
Okay. Are there any other questions from elected members about item 11.1? No, not seeing any other questions in relation to that. So we'll now move on to the next item on the agenda for questions, which is 12.1, which is MetroNet, Management and Maintenance of Public Spaces Draft Position Statement. Understand Councillor Devereux, you have some questions.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vernon. I did have a couple of questions related to the maintenance of the public spaces with the elevated rail. The first one relates to, it's sort of a connected but maybe obscure link, just that I've received some queries from cyclists about the elevated rail and the planned cycle paths in the area below the elevated rail, and they raised with me the question of whether there'd been any consideration or advocacy for including the principal shared path for cycling as part of the elevated rail infrastructure to encourage the uninterrupted journeys which the principal shared path is supposed to allow.
Thank you. Direct that question to the Chief Community Planner, Ms. Martin Good.
Through the Chair, yes, that was a matter that was considered as part of the first two phases of the project. The consideration was that an elevated PSP would require another structure that would significantly add to the bulk and overshadowing, which is probably trying to mitigate. Also, an elevated PSP would need ramps that would be needed to get the local cyclists to be able to access that elevated PSP, which would have a big impact on the functionality of the newly created public space. So it's proposed to be an on-ground principal shared path, which will be largely interrupted, but its detailed design is currently ongoing to ensure the sections are easily crossable. So the town continues to advocate for the design to prioritise active.
Thank you, Ms. Martin-Good. A little part of what you said kind of cut out. There's a slight electronic interference. Councillor Devereux, did you hear everything you needed to hear for the answer to that question?
I think pretty much, yes. I have a sort of subsequent question that relates to queries that people had raised, though.
By all means.
Yeah, thanks. Which sort of relates, in a sense, to what Ms. Martin-Good said, which is, and I'm glad to hear there is that consideration for how to make those journeys as little interrupted as possible, given that it's not possible to include them in the elevated rail. But I think part of their concern was also that with traffic being unimpeded by the rail, it would be even more intense and more difficult to cross. And so I'm not sure whether there are technical considerations that were considered as ways to tackle that, given that situation, if that makes sense.
Councillor Devereux, is that a question about whether there were technical considerations? That one that I can direct back to Ms. Martin-Good?
Yes, on the basis of even more traffic on those roads that the cycles will have to cross because they're not now impeded by the train. So whether
okay.
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Martin-Good.
Through the chair, there were technical considerations. However, I would need to take that on notice. So very happy to provide some further comment in the report for the OCM report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Devereux?
Great, thanks, Mayor Vernon. I did have another question, which was related to the mention in the officer's report of the negotiations with Metronet about the leasable spaces. And I just wanted to ask if there had been recognition from Metronet as part of those discussions that there are concrete plans, as I understand it, in some other locations like Bayswater and Morley, for concrete permanent leasable spaces, and whether that had been acknowledged as part of the discussions with Metronet.
Direct that question to Ms. Martin-Good.
Through the chair, Metronet have not acknowledged about planned permanent leasable spaces and other projects, which I think is difficult. The town is advocating for semi-permanent leasable spaces, however, in the form of modular structures, similar to some repurposed sea containers or pod structures. These modular structures still require service infrastructure, but could be more agile in their position within the designed public spaces and can be removed if needed. It's the town's view that these semi-permanent leasable spaces are critical to activating the public open space and could provide a future revenue stream. There is also a preference for these more ephemeral type activations, because where you have permanent built-in spaces, it reduces the ability for those spaces to respond to market demands. I've seen particular instances elsewhere, for whatever reason, those spaces have not become commercial viable, tenants have not been there, and that space remains vacant, sometimes become vandalised. So if you have a movable space, it much more easily responds to market conditions.
Councillor Devereux.
Many thanks, much appreciated response. The final question I had was just related to the sense that we have to negotiate individually with Metronet as a council, and to ask, has there been work done with the group of councils affected by the elevated rail together to negotiate with Metronet and any other councils affected by Metronet to get an agreed joint position around these issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Devereux. Ms Martin Good, are you able to assist with that?
Yes, through the chair. Yes, the short answer is absolutely. There is an alliance called the South East Corridor Council Alliance, so SECA, and we meet regularly. And Metronet is certainly one of the more prominent matters that are discussed in these groups. And while we acknowledge that there is significant power in that joint advocacy, we also absolutely respect the right for each council to have a different position. So in short, the answer is yes, there is the ability for all of those sector councils to try and advocate jointly. Thank you.
Councillor Devereux.
Many thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members about item 12.1? No. I have a couple of questions. In relation to the position of Metronet, which is set out at paragraph 11, subparagraph C, where it indicates Metronet has allocated funding to contribute to a 24-month establishment maintenance period after practical completion, and there is reference to the total funding being capped at $2.38 million for the Victoria Park Canning level crossing removal project. That relates to establishment maintenance period. However, the council resolution requested details to be sought from Metronet as to the total estimated construction cost that Metronet would spend on the public open spaces. Do we have any advance on information about that? Ms Martin Good?
Through the chair, no, I'm not aware that we have any specific figures in that regard. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you advise when the town expects to be provided with that information? Ms Martin Good?
That is a difficult question to answer, seeing as though that would be up to Metronet, but I would like to think that we would get that information relatively shortly. We are in contact with Metronet officers very frequently, so I'm sorry I can't give you a more definitive time frame.
Thank you. In relation to that same paragraph, when it refers to the total funding being capped at $2.38 million, which would be partly allocated to the City of Canning, is the town aware of how much is being proposed by Metronet will be allocated to the town of Victoria Park and how much to the City of Canning? Ms Martin Good?
Through the chair, no, we're not aware of that specific allocation of Town of Vic Park versus City of Canning. We will be asking for that information though, because of course, as you've alluded to, that's critical information for us to know. We've estimated ourselves, but that is a town estimate, not figures that have come from Metronet.
Thank you. From all of your regular meetings with the SECA council members, do you have an understanding of the plans of the City of Canning for the public open space created under their portion of elevated rail? Ms Martin Good?
Through the chairs, I'm not aware of them, but there may be officers, for instance, Mr Doy and Mr McCarthy, that may be familiar with their detailed plans. So very happy to seek that information and have that provided in the further comment section of the report.
Thank you. I'd be very grateful to take that one on notice and let you respond to it, because I have been informed by the Mayor of Canning that they had a plan for the longest skate park to run underneath elevated rail, which would be a very costly public open space to construct and deliver, potentially as well as maintain. So I'm very keen for us to find out from our next door neighbours what plans they have. So if that could be taken on notice, that would be appreciated. The next question I have is in relation to the idea of the leasable spaces. Does the town have an idea in mind now that Metronet have indicated the total area of public open space to be created? How much commercially lettable space the town is hoping to gain from this arrangement? Ms. Martin-Good.
Through the chair, that type of information is not yet obvious. We're hoping to get that type of information relatively shortly. Thanks.
Thank you. My next question is, the report indicates that the town has been working with Metronet with regards to the detailed designs. When is it going to be possible for a presentation to be made to elected members about those detailed designs? Or does Metronet still continue to require the town staff to be bound to confidentiality about those discussions?
Through the chair, a presentation of the Metronet staff to elected members is being organised imminently. There were emails today with governance staff and to try and tee that up. They originated late last week, so hopefully we'll be able to have a date for such a workshop very shortly, i.e. in the next few days.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members about this item? No, I'm not seeing any others. So we now need to move on. The next item, we do, however, have a disclosure of interest of a financial nature for 12.2. So Councillor Hendricks, we need to ask you to formally leave the meeting, and understand staff will be in contact with you as to when you can return. So Ms. Louise, would you be able to confirm that Councillor Hendricks has left the electronic meeting room, please?
Yes, Mayor Vernon.
Thank you. So item 12.2 is the stage 2 initiation of Albany Highway Precinct structure plan. Councillor Devereux, I understand you have some questions.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just one question really, which was picking up on the reports. It was great to see both reports about Albany Highway, the today and tomorrow reports. And I want to pick up on the emphasis in the Albany Highway Tomorrow report on improving connectivity with the train line and stations, which is mentioned in a number of places, page 17, page 47, 48, amongst others. And I just wanted to pick up on that issue around connectivity with the train line and stations to ask, is the budget for 22-23 that is allocated for the implementation of the integrated transport strategy sufficient to seriously contribute to this aim, or are there areas of the strategy that should be further prioritised in the budget to this end? Thank you.
Direct that question to Ms. Martin-Good.
Through the chair, after numerous workshops with council, the town will be recommending funding in the 22-23 budget relating to the development of bike lanes on portions of Mint Street. That's as part of the Western Australian Bicycle Network grant. This project will substantially improve cycling and pedestrian connections from Carlisle Station to Albany Highway. Other projects and initiatives from the integrated transport strategy will be developed in future years and brought to council in future budget deliberations. Thank you.
Councillor Devereux, anything further?
No, thanks very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from any other elected members in relation to this item? No, I'm not seeing any. So Ms. Louise, if you could please send a message to Councillor Hendricks to let him know that he can rejoin the meeting, that would be great. And we will just wait for him. Hopefully he won't have any difficulties logging back in.
I confirm I have done that, Mayor Vernon. And Councillor Hendricks has rejoined the meeting.
Excellent, thank you. Welcome back, Councillor Hendricks. So we'll now move on to the next item on the list, which is item 12.4, the event strategy. Councillor I understand you have some questions.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Does this event strategy as it currently stands have the capacity to tell us what sort of events the town should be putting on?
Direct that question to Ms. Martin Good.
Through the chair, the short answer is yes. The event strategy, which is informed by the key findings report, which is attachment 12.42 in the agenda, identifies the sort of events related to type, size, frequently and scale, etc. that stakeholders, i.e. the community, wants to see in the town, as well as the underlying key drivers. The strategy also helps to define the town's role to ensure the program of events are relevant, inclusive, best practice, safe, and environmentally and economically sustainable. Thank you.
Councillor I.
Thank you. Yes, I have read the key findings report. My question is more about the strategy itself, because we're endorsing the strategy, not the key findings report. So my question is, does the strategy provide us with the information that we need to decide what our annual events program will look like?
Ms. Martin Good.
Through the chair, so the event strategy is a higher level document and it doesn't provide specifics about the annual program, annual yearly events program. But this will be captured as part of a separate process informed by the strategy, budget, local and wider trends and influences, as well as workforce capacity. So scoping for this year's annual program of events was progressed, as well as the through and parallel to the budget deliberation process. So the annual events program for 2022-23, that'll be provided to council very shortly, hopefully this month, but in future years you'll get a much better alignment of the annual events program because it will be prepared with alignment with the budget deliberation cycle, and of course we will have hopefully an event strategy that's adopted. Thank you.
Councillor I.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Ms. Martin Good, could you just clarify when you said that the annual events program would be presented to council shortly, hopefully this month? Were you meaning at a council meeting or in some other way?
Through the chair, no, not at a council meeting. We were thinking probably via the elected member portal. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members on this item? Councillor Hendricks.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vernon. I had one question on this one. It's to do with on page 17 in the final draft of the attachment about strategy action 3.3, which is to partner with community organisations and other agencies to work together to achieve the vision. And it states how they will do this is to develop new/existing partnerships with other key stakeholders. I was just going to ask, is the intent of this strategy to develop new partnerships with other stakeholders and also to build on existing partnerships? I'll leave it at that.
Ms. Martin Good.
Through the chair, it is about both new and developing existing partnerships. So there's lots of examples where you have, we might have worked with an existing community group in one particular form, and it's about working with them in a more enhanced form. And of course, the obvious one is where we've not worked with people before and they're a new partnership. So the answer to your question, Councillor Hendricks, is that it's both. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hendricks. Any other elected members with a question on this item? No, in that case, we'll move on to item 12.5, proposed heritage list, local planning policy heritage list and amendments to the local heritage survey. Councillor Hendricks, I think you had indicated you had some questions about this item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vernon. So my question is to do with the officer's recommendation, and there's an error, or I perceive there to be an error there. So in the officer's recommendation, item 2/ or 2 in brackets E, I think the first part should read place 044, not 004, and then dash residence 105 Berwick Street. My question was, can this be altered before the ACM, or does it need a motion made at the ACM to correct that?
Direct that question to Mr. Cruikshank.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Hendricks for drawing that to our attention. Yes, that is an error, and that will be amended in the report presented to the ordinary council meeting. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hendricks. Are there any other questions from elected members with regards to this item? Councillor Hamer.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I had a question which you might be able to background for. The what was it? Page 113, the vacant block, infant healthcare 008. What's the significance of having a heritage list for a vacant block?
Direct that question to Mr. Cruikshank.
Madam Mayor, I might need to take that on notice, albeit is Councillor Hamer able to identify the property address? That might assist me.
Councillor Hamer.
I might have to send that in. I've lost that page now, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll take that on notice. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
All right, thank you. So we'll take that one on notice. Are there any other questions in relation to this item? I just have one quick question for Mr. Cruikshank, further to the questions and the statement that we heard earlier this evening from Mr. Cahill. What is the officer's view at the moment with regards to the imperative for the School of Philosophy's property at 13 Teague Street, Burswood, to remain part of the heritage list?
Madam Mayor, I guess the assessment that was undertaken by our heritage consultant was that this particular property had both aesthetic significance in terms of the aesthetic significance of the building that exists on the site, as well as the social significance as to the previous use of the property. While understanding the concerns that have been expressed about the potential impact of a heritage listing on the potential redevelopment of the site and potentially the property values, I guess some of those concerns would equally apply to any other property in the town. So I think on balance at this point in time, the town's officer's view would still be that the building has been identified as having significance as worthy of retention, which would warrant its retention on the list.
Thank you. With regards to the consultation that was done by the town's architects with property owners, do you have any information for elected members about what degree of communications or interactions we had with the owners of 13 Teague Street about their property being included in this list? Mr. Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, so you would recall that this has really been a two-stage process. First of all, there was the draft local heritage survey that was put together. And I guess the property at 13 Teague Street, as I recall, was included on the draft local heritage survey. There were letters sent to the owners of all the properties on that draft list. At this point in time, I can't recall whether or not we did receive a submission from the School of Philosophy. I'm happy to check whether that was the case, but ultimately the decision of council last year was to include this property at least on the local heritage survey. The second part of the process, as you're aware, is now preparing the draft local heritage list. And certainly as part of that, there was a letter sent to the School of Philosophy, as was the case with all other properties proposed on the draft list. And obviously that has resulted in a submission being received from 13 Teague Street in this particular instance. And I guess that's where we're at, for council to consider that submission and make a determination.
Thank you. And for this final question, forgive me if I've failed to spot it in the report. Going forward, how often is it intended that we will revisit or review this list? Mr. Cruikshank?
Thank you. I don't know that that's actually mentioned, and I might take that on notice, particularly in terms of the legislative requirements to review the list. So I'll take that on notice. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could take that on notice, and if you could also consider quite separately for the potential for the legislative requirements, what might be an optimal position from the town's perspective policy-wise about this. I am aware that the local municipal inventory list had sat for a very long time without much amendment until we started this process. So I'd be interested in what the town's administration's view is about the frequency with which we should be looking at this particular list going forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take that on notice. Councillor Hamer, you have a question?
I just found the address for my last question was 71 Oak Street, if that helps.
Thank you. I'm sure that'll be of assistance to Mr. Cruikshank, but the question can still be taken on notice unless Mr. Cruikshank wants to say he wishes to answer it now.
I think they would at least, thank you, Madam Mayor, I think they would at least identify that was the site of the former infant health centre from memory, but yes, I'll need to take it on notice, so thank you.
Yes, thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members about this item? No, there being no other questions, then we're going to move on. So we now reach item 13.1, which is proposed parking restrictions. So Councillor Hamer, I understand you've got some questions about this item, please.
Thank you, Maven. I had a couple. It might sound like a silly question. The Mackey Street tree that's blocking the vision, is that possible to be moved or relocated?
Direct that question to the Chief Operations Officer, Ms. Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We did look at that, and the removal of a healthy verge tree is usually not recommended by officers, and it's considered to be the last resort.
Councillor Hamer.
And the tree, is that been an issue for the owner, or someone else complained, or is that just the town's identified it themselves?
Ms. Adams.
My understanding is it's been identified as a sightline issue, I can look into how that was identified and put that into the report in further considerations.
In that case, we'll take that on notice, Ms Adams, so that it does go in the report for Councillor Hamer. Councillor Hamer, you have other questions?
Yep. Second question was the Gresham Street restricted parking on one side of the road. How does the town make that decision of which side of the road gets the restricted parking?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, the parking was just restricted on the side that had a higher number of crossovers, and this would therefore result in a high number of residents that would benefit from this. Thank you.
Okay. And the last question was an error which was on the map, which has been amended, and is the parking on Berwick Street, are people not abiding by those signs, or is it just the increase which is causing the traffic problems?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, the problem that's been identified is that there's been an increase in verge parking, and there tends not to be any parking on the carriageway, and at the moment the clearway signs are actually pertaining just to the carriageway. So by putting up the no parking on the verge signs, we'll be restricting and managing the restrictions of parking on the actual verge, and it's a safety issue at the moment for visibility.
Anything further, Councillor Hamer?
Sure. And the number of cars that are currently utilising those parking, will they have sufficient parking on the side streets to accommodate, or will that just be a different issue?
Ms Adams?
So through the chair, it's difficult to predict what residents will do, but in our experience, people tend to actually sometimes double stack in the driveways, or perhaps residents sometimes make their own off-street modifications to create more accessible hard stand to allow parking in that way. There is the possibility that some of the side streets may see some additional parking, but we'll have to see how that goes and manage that as it comes up.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hamer. Councillor Hendricks.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Vernon. I've got a couple of questions on this one. The first one's to do with the attachment to do with Berwick Street, attachment 13.1.2. I noticed that Getty Street's been renamed to Mackey Street. I know it's not probably a good look there, so I don't know if that can be changed before the OCM. That's the first question.
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, yes, it can. That is an error, and in the middle of the extract, the Mackey Street that's referenced there should be Getty Street. Yes, thank you. Okay, that's the first question. The other one is I note that the clearway signs are to be removed and replaced with no standing signs. The question is, rather than have two signs on each post, that's the ones at the corners, the one sign will say no standing, the other one will say no parking on verge. My question is, can that be replaced with just one sign that reads no parking on road or verge?
Ms Adams? So
through the chair, the no stopping sign actually pertains to a different direction, which is actually indicating around the corner. There are shoulder line marking on the actual road, solid lines, which actually indicate no stopping or parking on the carriageway. So the removal of the clearway signs doesn't change the parking on the carriageway, but the addition of no parking on the verge signage is to stop people parking on the verge. So the existing no stopping signs are separate to the intended no parking on the verge signs.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hendricks. Are there any other questions in relation to this item? No, Councillor Hendricks, you still have your, thank you for taking down your electronic hand. Thank you. So we'll now move on to item 13.2, proposal to dispose of portion of Reed Park by lease. Councillor Ife.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I have a few questions. Has the Vic Park Community Garden Committee yet been consulted by either the town or the applicant about this?
Ms Adams? Oh, sorry, no, not Ms Adams. Oh, yes, Ms Adams.
Thank you. Through the chair, at this stage, the town has not consulted with the Vic Park Community Garden Committee. So if the concept is supported, there will be opportunities to consult with this committee through the the development application process, lease advertising, as well as engagement between the town and the committee, noting that the community garden is a nearby stakeholder. We've noted this, I think, in paragraph 20 of the report.
Councillor Ife.
Thank you. Have we yet had a chance? I understand that perhaps we haven't because the DA hasn't come up yet, but have we had a chance to consider what impact there is likely to be on the community garden from the installation of these containers, not just in terms of access and safety, which I feel is addressed to a certain extent, but in terms of light and shade on the garden?
Ms Adams.
Through the chair, the community garden is located to the north of the proposed development. And considering that the winter sunlight comes from the north, it's unlikely the sea containers will overshadow the community garden. The footprint of the concept is 30 square metres and the height is approximately 2.5 metres, and it's got visually permeable balustrading. So the concept's small in scale in comparison to the community garden, which is over 900 square metres, and also abuts that multi-storey development at 484 Albany Highway. Thank you.
Councillor Ife.
Thank you. One last question. Do we have some capacity, and I appreciate this might be a bit cheeky, is there some capacity for us to direct any funds received from the lease of this portion of Reed Park to be specifically used for improvements to Reed Park itself, at least for a period of time?
Ms Adams.
So through the chair, the proposed income has not been considered as part of the financial year budget for 22-23. So there is financial capacity to direct the funds received to improve Reed Park.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next to ask questions, Councillor Hendricks.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Again, I've got a couple on this one. So the first one, it mentions that the proposal is to place 2 retrofitted sea containers side by side. So my question is, will the walls where the containers are joined be removed to make one large open space, or will they remain as 2 individual containers with one opening up to the park and the other one with just the back ends being opened? I don't know if that's or do we know what the final design concept is? Because the ones that they showed are all single containers, and I believe these are going to be 2 containers next to each other. So my question is, can they be opened up to be just one room?
Ms Adams.
Thank you. Through the chair, the proponents confirmed the intent is to have a single space internally with openings in the wall where the containers abut each other.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question was, they're offering that the ground used or the bottom, the open space that's created is offered for council use. And the question is, who would decide what that's going to be used for, or who's going to use it?
Ms Adams.
Through the chair, the proponent's given some further advice to this in point 6 of attachment 13.2.2. So the proponent is therefore willing to accommodate the town managing the ground floor, and if the concept proceeds, there'll be further review as to the use of the ground floor.
Okay, and actually there's one other question, if I can ask that one as well, please, Mayor Vernon. So it mentions, I've lost it, 2 6. Sorry. That's here. I've got it. Okay. So it mentions that in point 1 of the recommendation that the legal opinion at the cost of the applicant confirming to the satisfaction of the Chief Executive Officer that the concepts can be accommodated on Reed Park within the trust. I was just wondering how confident this town that can be done, seeing it's meant for community. It's meant for recreation, basically. So my question is, how confident or how likely can that be achieved? Because a fair bit of work seems to have gone into it so far.
Ms. Adams?
Sorry, through the chair, can I just clarify if the question is how confident will the town be in the legal opinion?
Yeah, because if it's not approved, like if you don't get the regulatory approvals, I mean, it's obviously not going to go ahead. So
yes, Councillor Hendricks, Ms. Adams was just simply seeking confirmation of your question. So Ms. Adams, how confident is the town that it will receive legal advice?
Through the chair, the town has not received that legal advice yet, so I can't make a judgment on that at the moment.
Councillor Hendricks, anything further?
No, that's it. Thank you, Never.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members about this item? Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mervyn. And I've just got 2 questions. The first one sort of actually came out of the comments made by the applicant's representative in public question statement time. And he stated that he considered that it was similar, that development would be similar to a parklet. My question is it planned, or in the discussions with the staff, with the applicant, has it been planned that the commercial area of this sea container development will be open to members, any member of the public, or will it be open to customers of the cafe?
Ms. Adams?
Through the chair, I'm just going off that point 6 in attachment 13.2.2. The proponent has said that the ground floor space could be utilised for a multi-purpose community space, indicating that it would be open for the community use.
Yeah, that's not my question. My question is the commercial portion of it. So the top floor, which is utilised by the cafe, will that be the exclusive use of the cafe?
I'll take that. Sorry, through the chair, I'll take that on notice.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, if that is the case and it is the commercial considered to be intended to be for commercial use of the cafe, the valuation document has suggested that the valuation is based on the fact that the land is zoned for parks and recreation use. And my question is that, and you may want to take some notice too, is that the most appropriate basis for the valuation if a section of it is going to be used purely for commercial use for the betterment of the local business? Or would it be better, is there another basis on which the valuation should be based on?
Ms. Adams?
Through the chair, may I request that you would direct us to Mr. Denham? He may be able to answer that one.
Certainly. Mr. Denham, are you able to provide us with an answer to that question? We can't hear you, Mr. Denham. You're on mute.
Is that better, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. The valuer has made an assessment of the valuation based on the Parks and Recreation zoning of the property and the fact that a development approval would be awarded to authorise this sort of very limited commercial use. Thank you, Chair.
Didn't really answer my question.
Councillor Potter, you wanted to pursue that matter?
Sorry?
You wanted to pursue that with further questions?
Yeah, I'll just say that my question is that how they that is how they've based their valuation. I understand that. My question is if it is going to be used, and I'm not sure that it is going to be used totally for commercial use, a portion of it, but if a portion of this development, minimal though it may be, is going to be used totally for commercial benefit for an individual business, is the Parks, and I'm happy if you take my notice, is basing the valuation on Parks and Recreation the best basis to work the valuation on? Or is there another more appropriate basis? And I'm happy for you to take that on notice if that's,
Mr. Denham.
Through you, Chair, we'll take that on notice. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, thank you. Councillor Potter, any further questions? No? Thank you. I do have just a couple of questions with relation to this item. Is there a reason why the town hasn't obtained legal advice before presenting this to council, given that it appears in the resolution that it's contingent upon us receiving legal advice to say that, one, this can actually be done given the zoning of Parks and Recreation, and two, even assuming it can be done, the report indicates that council may then need to amend or alter that deed of trust. Ms. Adams?
Thank you. My understanding for this one is that the approval in principle is sought prior to the applicant paying the legal costs for that legal opinion for the town.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, the town wishes the applicant to pay the legal advice, and the applicant won't pay the legal advice unless there's preliminary approval for the concept. Is that about the sum total of it?
Yes, Mayor Vernon, that's correct. We did try to ask the other way, but we've come to this point where we're asking for the approval in principle first. Thank you.
All right, thank you. My next question relates to, and I accept that there's no development application as such, but unless I'm mistaken, every visit I've ever made to Reed Park in that particular location immediately below Sonder Cafe, the gradient of the land is not level. It falls away considerably away from the building that houses Sonder Cafe. How is that going to be addressed for a structure that will need to be level if patrons are going to stand and sit on top of it? And who is going to be responsible for the costs of that? And how will we assess the impact of such site works on our park? Ms. Adams?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Operations and planning have looked at that in detail, and we've discussed those more operational aspects with the proponent. The idea is to have minimal site works and the cost of that development to be taken into account by the proponent. How that ends up looking will depend as the design progresses. But the difference in grade is taken into account, yes.
So is it the case that when a development application is made, assuming for a moment that one is made in due course, will the details of how that uneven gradient will be dealt with become known at that stage? And will that be a matter for which the public in due course would be invited to make comments on? Ms. Adams?
Yes, Madam Mayor, it is part of the applications. So their cross sections and their detailed plans will show how they will take that gradient change into account. And those plans, to the best of my knowledge, will be made available to the public at that stage.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members about this item? No? All right. In that case, we have the next item is 14.3, which is the budget item, for which I had a question just as soon as I can jump forward in my agenda to the right place. So my question relates to paragraph 16 of the officer's report on the budget, which refers to the workforce, and subparagraph 8A states that there are no additional full-time equivalent staff positions recommended in the draft budget, and that the employee costs inclusive of salary, superannuation allowances and other employee-related costs show an increase of 4.7% on the 21-22 year. And although it says changes to the salary costs include salary increases and variations to the superannuation contribution rates, could you please advise how much of the 4.7% increase in employee costs is to be attributed to staff salaries? Direct that question to the Chief Executive Officer, unless you say that it can go to the Acting Chief Financial Officer.
Through the Chair, I'm happy to take that, so Mayor Vernon.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Can I clarify your question? The increase in staff salary, are you able to expand on that a little for me?
So according to your report, it's expected that employee costs, which is inclusive of salary and superannuation contributions, are estimated to rise by 4.7% in the coming financial year. How much of the 4.7% is an increase in staff salaries as opposed to the superannuation contribution amount? So I'm wanting to know what is the predicted increase in staff salaries for the next year, please.
I can answer that broadly tonight and then take the specific detail on notice. So there is provision within the draft budget for a 2.5% salary increase to all employees. However, there are individual employees who, through length of service at the town, will receive a step increase within a salary band. That is likely to be a far smaller proportion of that total increase, but I can't for you tonight provide that specific number.
All right, thank you. So I would like the balance of that question then to please be taken on notice, if you could.
Certainly, yes.
Yes, thank you. Now, my next question related to paragraph 18 about loans. So it indicates that the budget proposes no new loans. with the WA Treasury, but it does include a carry forward loan to be raised for the Edward Millen project to the value of $2.2 million. Can I ask why that would be described as a carry forward loan if we haven't actually loaned the money? Why is it not then properly characterised as a new loan? Mr. Ellis?
I may ask Mayor Vernon if we can pass that to Grace. It may be an accounting treatment.
All right, thank you. Ms. Ursich, are you able to assist?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Nothing accounting-wise, it was just to kind of highlight that it relates to last year's budget and a carry-forward project. So the Edward Millen was originally listed in last year's budget, so we just thought using the word carry-forward would kind of link up to that.
So remind me then, please, in last year's budget or the current year's budget, was it listed as a $2.2 million loan? Or
yes,
was
it was.
The project listed in the Capital Works program?
Thanks, through the chair. Yes, it was listed as a new loan, and it was also the total amount for the Edward Millen project was listed in the Capital Works program.
But whilst the project didn't proceed, equally neither did the loan get taken out. Is that right?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, that's correct.
All right, thank you. And my final questions relate to the Capital Works program, and in particular, paragraph 15, subparagraph E, which refers to the proposed Capital Works program, having $12.363 million in new initiatives. Can you please outline how much of those new initiatives will affect the town's asset renewal ratio? Ms. Ursich?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I would have to take that question on notice.
All right, thank you. If you wouldn't mind, I will note that to be taken on notice. And at the same time, happy for it to be taken on notice, the further question about how much of those new initiatives will affect the town's asset sustainability ratio at the same time, please. So I'm looking for the value of the works being done within that 12.363 million that will address both of those ratios. Thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members with regard to this item? No? In that case, that brings us to the end of the items indicated for questions. Is there anything after 14.3 in the budget that anybody wanted to ask any questions about? No, I'm not seeing any hands going up. So it looks like we've come to the end of the items in the agenda. So item 16 on the agenda is motion of which previous notice has been given, of which there are none. Item 17 is public participation time. And I'm just going to check, and we have no members of the public remaining in the electronic meeting room with us. So at 8:16 p.m, declare public participation time closed. Item 18 is questions from members without notice on general matters. Are there any questions from elected members without notice on general matters? No, everybody's looking super happy, got no questions. Excellent. Item 19 is confidential matters. We have none. And so we're at the end of our agenda. So at 8:16 p.m,